find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
That was so aggressive.
Clap. Well, I can't clap.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Excuse me.
Clap! Just to make sure,
Did it spike?
Oh, hell yeah.
Did it spike the audio?
Screaming clap into the microphone? Yeah, it worked.
So next time I might do that because I get tired of moving my arms sometimes. Podcasting is supposed to be easy.
Oh, your life is so rough as a podcaster.
Yeah. You know what I was explaining to someone the other day? That we've only ever recorded one episode in person and everything else has been remote. And how crazy is that?
It is pretty crazy because the majority of the run of the podcast so far, we lived in the same city, but...
We could have.
Well, it actually involves, like... To do it the way that we do it, like, you know...
It's technically easier.
It's technically easier, yeah. We would have to have, like... I want to have equipment so we can record in person. Because I'd love to go down to Portland and, like... record with you and the miniature kiddature.
Yeah. Get the baby. Ew. Get
the baby cat involved.
No, I was gonna say get the baby involved, but that my niece is a teenager, so ew.
Oh, she's not a baby anymore.
No,
she's
very much no.
She's not a full grown person. Not yet.
Getting there.
But there's one thing you never grow out of.
Bones?
Yeah.
Your skeleton? You never grow out of your skeleton.
You never grow out of your skeleton. But I was going to say bone puns.
Oh, they're back, are they?
It's time for the return of the Thought Catalog article.
Hello, old friend. I thought I had forgotten thee.
It has many answers for us because, we would want to know how would you know if a spine finds you funny, right?
Yeah.
It starts cracking up.
Oh, yeah. Christ.
Why didn't one skeleton want to look at the other skeleton?
I don't know.
He didn't have the stomach for it.
Oh, there it is. Because it's just bones. Just a rib cage and a spine. No
That's
organs.
All I am.
I'm like Captain Barbossa in Pirates of the Caribbean, where I drink something and you see it all over me.
Yeah, I am bones, marijuana, and spite.
In olden days, a glimpse of femur was only for morbid dreamers, but you're not alone. Bring anything bones. Two goofy gals with deathly interest go on a skeleton inquest in your headphones. Anything bones.
Hello and welcome to Anything Bones. I'm Sophie Forgotten Schwartz.
And I'm Katelyn California Hart.
And this is the podcast where we talk about bones and bone-related topics.
That is Correcto Mundo. Hi, welcome. We are so excited to be back recording. It's been a minute. We got to see each other in person pretty recently, which was fun.
Katelyn had a little like Airbnb style getaway get together for her birthday, and I went down there with the old boyfriend, and it was so much fun. We were hanging out in Olympia, which is a very cute little town.
So much unexpected charm in Olympia, Washington, which is a perfect halfway point between our places now. So yeah, also had like the best bagel and lox of my life.
Oh yeah, and we went to this little bakery and I got a whole loaf of challah.
How was it? You must have you had it by now?
I did. I messed up because I went back to my place on Monday and I did not take the challah with me, so it sat around for a couple of days, but by the time I ate it, it tasted really good. It was a little stale.
Yeah.
But that one's on me. I cannot blame the challah for my own ills, you know?
No, that's right. That's definitely right.
Sins of the buyer and all that.
Yeah, it would have been really good a few days previously, I bet. Even better.
Oh, absolutely. But it was still really good. I mean, I never turn my nose up at a homemade challah.
Yeah, so my question is, did you like eat it dry or butter, jam? What was the vibe?
I'm an animal. I just ate it dry, like
Nice.
out of the bag. Because, like, if your challah isn't good just like that, then, you know, what hope do you have of...
Yeah.
I mean, it can be smothered in jam. That's fine, but you'll know underneath.
Yeah. Sorry if any eagle-eared listeners can hear a tiny meowing in the background. Minnie is choosing this moment to speak her truth, and she's mad at me. We've been trapped here for too long.
I was going to say, is there a little bit of, like, trouble in paradise there for the roommates?
Well, no. I mean, so listen, the Portland area has been under siege by snow and ice for the last few days. I think it started right when I was leaving work on Wednesday, and what is today, Sunday? It's finally starting to like go away, but it was snowing a little bit earlier today. So I'm like, make up your fucking mind. I'm usually okay in the snow and my car does okay in the snow, but I did tragically get stuck on a hill. So I'm over the snow this time around. Nobody can tell me, but it's so beautiful. Give me a fucking break. Like, this ice is so shitty. There were just like, you would drive along and there were just cars like abandoned on the sides of the road from so many people spinning out or just like giving up. Yeah, it was weird.
That's what Kelsey was saying. She was saying that there was people abandoning their cars on the freeway or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it like the most snow since like the 1940s or something like that?
It felt like it. It like came on very quickly, and like I feel like everybody woke up on Thursday morning and was like, "Oh shit, we're not equipped for this," because the whole city only has a few snowplows in it. First of all, and then they can't do shit about the ice. So yeah, it's been yucky.
Well, I hope it thaws out down there soon.
It will. It has to. I think it's happening. Let's just, try and keep it going. Oh, my mouth is so dry. I need a bev before I start telling a story.
Please, I would not make you tell a story without a bev.
I think it's you. This is from the Olympia trip. This watermelon Waterloo sparkling water, and I swear to God, every time I see this shit I start singing Waterloo, couldn't escape if I wanted to, and I can't stop.
That has been Joe and I's bubbly water brand of choice of late, and that happens to me all the time. Relatable content.
Not sponsored by Waterloo.
No,
okay.
But Waterloo, get at us. I would love a sparkling water sponsorship. That would really help me financially.
Yeah, because I spent... that's my main beverage of choice is seltzer water.
Same. Bougie.
If we could get a Waterloo or like a Diet Coke sponsorship...
I mean, we should really hit up those Liquid Death people.
That is on brand. Okay, table that.
Considered table.
So... I was minding my own business this week, and I was on Instagram, as you do, and suddenly I see a couple of messages on the Anything Bones Instagram from Suzanne, from Sophie's mom, and I go to click on them, and I'm immediately drawn in because the picture, like the thumbnail from the article, is 5 graves in a row, and it's an article about something in California, and I'm just like, I was hooked.
Damn, okay.
So it was like, what was the name of the article? I'm just going to find it because it hooked me. It was from San Francisco Gate, SF Gate, the murders behind the most disturbing tombstones in the Bay Area.
Whoa, I have not heard of this.
I know.
This is my native land.
I know. I was very surprised by this. And, excuse me, I already fucked up. There were 6 graves in a row in concrete, and we'll talk about it in a little bit.
Oh.
So anyway, shout out to Suzanne. As soon as I saw this, I was like, Sophie, I'm taking this.
Yeah, you texted me, you were like, your mom sent us a topic, but I really want it, but you can have it because she's your mom. And I'm like, you can have the topic. You get first dibs because it is your mom.
Felt like I had to say something, but be like, I want this, though. So I followed up that article that Suzanne sent, which I'll link to in the show notes from sfgate.com. And I listened to the Dark Histories podcast, season 3, episode 16. I've listened to Dark Histories for a couple of my researched cases before. It's like one guy telling the story. He's this very like soothing British guy. 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. I did fall asleep multiple times listening to this one, though, because his voice soothes me so much. It's not a diss, it's a compliment.
Blessing and a curse.
Yeah. Also, of course, Wikipedia and then crimecapsule.com.
Ooh. I do not want to be in the crime capsule.
No. Nobody wants to be in there, but hey, some people are. I'm taking us all the way back to 1896.
Ooh.
In the Bay Area in California.
California?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, my mouth is still so dry. All right. So these are known as the McGlincy murders. The patriarch of the McGlincy family was named Colonel Richard McGlincy. If I say McGlincy, just like doesn't roll off the tongue for me. So if I say it wrong, sorry. He was a farmer from West Virginia. Unfortunately, he fought in the Civil War on the wrong side. And when that was done, he moved his family to the Santa Clara Valley, where he became a very well-known like fruit rancher, because we love fruit in California. I understand.
You wrangle that fruit. You make sure
That's
that fruit
right.
cannot get away.
That's what fruit is there
That's
for.
what fruit ranching is.
Wrangling berries, melons.
Get back
yeah.
here, you peaches.
Yeah. Kind of corralling them all in one place in a basket. I don't know.
I'm imagining like an orchard full of like, you know, the Ents from Lord of the Rings, the like living trees, but they're all fruit trees and they're all kind of wandering around like sheep do.
Yeah.
Or like cows.
Kind of mixed with the trees from Wizard of Oz that are like the mean girls of the trees.
That fucking huck apples at you if they don't like you.
Yes.
I always thought those trees were extremely scary. I'm just saying. I never
That whole
liked
movie
those
is
trees.
fucked up. If you list like there are podcasts, Morbid did an episode once, but like the production of that movie, multiple people got hurt on that one. Like there's a lot of fucked up stuff.
The snow is fucking asbestos.
Yeah. And then just like Judy Garland's whole sad story. Just all of it. Anyway.
We'll touch on that another time.
I think that would be a good topic for another time. Anyway, so the colonel was allegedly voted to represent the Bay Area farmers at Chicago's World's Fair in 1893. So he really must have known what he was doing fruit-wise, but he was on the wrong side in the Civil War, so I don't know. I don't like him.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure I want any of his Confederate fruit.
Nah, even if it's perfectly ripe. I don't want it.
Even if it was perfectly ripe and chucked at my head by a living tree, I would not eat it.
So he was married to Ada Wells McGlincy. She had been married once before, and when they got married, they moved into this mansion in Campbell, California, with her 2 adult children, Hattie and James. And so Hattie is an interesting character. She is 27 approximately when this story takes place, and she was engaged to a man named Charles Dunham. He seemed like a pretty good dude, but at some point Charles's brother James Dunham kind of sidled in with Hattie. And yeah, one way or the other, she ended up marrying the brother James Dunham, who was not the better of the 2 brothers by all accounts.
Yeah.
So he had been described as, quote, a dull-witted but personable man, unable to keep a job.
Ooh, burn.
So some people believe that might be why he sidled up with Hattie, because her family was pretty well off, and if maybe he just didn't really want to work anymore.
He was tired of losing all those jobs.
Apparently, yeah, and he was like, I'm ready to join the fruit empire of California.
I'm ready to dodge those fucking trees.
Yeah. So I guess everybody except Hattie was pretty upset about her marriage to James Dunham and not Charles Dunham. her family had no idea why she like made this switch. And they really didn't get along with James Dunham. I'm going to call him James Dunham the whole time because there's also a James that's in the McGlincy family. So there's too many Jameses.
Common name back then.
Yeah. So they get engaged, they quickly get married, and Dunham is immediately like, I'm going to go take some courses at Santa Clara College because I'm awesome and I have this money now.
Get some education.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what was so wrong about that, but my source here says that it was a year-long course and he was telling everybody that he was going to finish it in 6 weeks. So maybe it was the pride and the arrogance that was the problem and not the schooling part.
Maybe, or when you just don't like someone.
Yeah.
And everything they do is crappy to you. You're like,
Yeah.
They went to the grocery store. Can you fucking believe that?
Yeah.
And your friend's like, yeah, what a dick.
And you guys are getting more and more mad about nothing. Yeah, I feel
exactly.
that. And maybe it was that it was Latin and Greek courses because I don't know, he's not an academic, so why does he need to know that?
And that is not gonna help him in the job market.
Right. So maybe, yeah, that was probably part of it. So anyway, the family doesn't like him, but he is living in the house, which is on the ranch. And Hattie gets pregnant and gives birth to a son in early May of 1896. And the son's name is Percy.
Aww.
Unfortunately, only 22 days after Percy's birth, James Dunham did something very, very terrible, and he caused the death of 6 people, the 6 people that the pictures of their tombstones caught my attention at the beginning of this.
Why do I always forget when you're telling me a story that there's gonna be murder?
It's gonna be bad. All right, so we're at May 26th, 1896. So the colonel, his stepson, the James, who is not James Dunham, and a farmhand.
James 2.
Yeah, the good James.
That's what we'll call him.
He's not going to live for very much longer, so.
Oh.
So the colonel, the good James, and then a farmhand named George Shable went to this meeting in town in the evening on May 26th. And James Dunham knew they were going to be there for a while, so he had plenty of time to get started on his ghastly deeds. His weapons of choice were a hatchet and then a bunch of rifles and pistols, which you don't need. It's just a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a lot of weapons.
Yeah, and you're going to be fighting your postpart. I mean, it's just sick. Why? I don't know why you would do this to your family. Around 9 o'clock, he went into his wife's bedroom and she was there with the baby. Somehow or other, she had time, or he gave her time or wanted her to write a note. And so in her own hand, most likely, I mean, he could have forged it, it said, quote, "Please say goodbye for me to my dear mother, brother, and stepfather." We don't know exactly the chain of events, but that's really fucked up. If it seems to me like he made her write that before he killed her.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. And then with her, he strangled her. So he didn't even use the weapons that he had. And I guess the only bright spot in this horrible mess is that he didn't kill the baby. He left the baby alone. This one hurts. So the maid, Minnie Schessler.
No, not Minnie.
I know. This hurts me deeply. She came in because she heard a commotion in Hattie's bedroom. Hattie is a really cute name also, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
If I get another cat, I might name her Hattie.
Mm.
Anyway, so when Minnie came into the bedroom, Dunham ended up using the hatchet and killed her pretty quickly. He went downstairs where his mother-in-law, Ada McGlincy, was in her bedroom, and he also killed her with the hatchet. And then he sat around for at least an hour or two waiting for the others to come back.
That's always so creepy and upsetting to me when the murderer waits in the house or is in the house for a long period of time after committing the murders. It's just it gives me the crawls the skin.
Yeah, it's so creepy. So when the Colonel and Good James and George, the farmhand, come home, they are immediately, I mean, from what we can determine, they were immediately like met by James Dunham. He was immediately able to fatally shoot Good James. And then he shot his father-in-law, the Colonel, who like ran to like a cabin that was on the property and locked himself in there. But then Dunham ended up killing him by just firing at the wall.
God, that's so terrible.
Right? It's just like, why are you doing this? Like, it's just so sick.
Yeah, this family was like his key to like living a good life because like you said, he was, not the best at holding down a job.
Yeah, he didn't want to work. He wouldn't have had to. Like, he just needed to. The baby was only alive for 22 days at this point. It just, it's so, we'll never know what made him snap or why he wanted to do this, but it seems very methodically planned out. And again, this was 1896, so this wasn't something that people had heard about very much. This was not,
No.
I mean, there was crime and stuff, but I don't think like these mass murders were very common like they kind of are today, unfortunately. James Dunham has just killed his father-in-law, and he realizes not only is the farmhand that was with the other men, he's missing, but there's another farmhand named Robert Briscoe who is somewhere on the property. He's like a live-in servant or something. James Dunham quickly finds Robert Briscoe on the property at a different cabin where he had been hiding and shoots him, but he can't find George Shable. George Shable is the only adult that survives this whole thing, and he hides in the barn. And I guess at one point James Dunham came into the barn and was looking for him, might have been taunting him a little bit, and then decided that there had been gunshots, there had been a commotion, people were going to come and see what was going on. So he changed his mind about finding George, got on a horse, and galloped out of there. And by some accounts, he didn't even put a saddle on.
1, rude to the horse.
Yeah.
2, so George Sable hid in the stable?
Nailed it. Nailed it on the head right there.
This is such a hideous attack. That was a stupid joke, but this is a hideous attack.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. So, like I said, George and the 22-day-old Percy are the only two people that are left alive on the property. A neighbor is the first person on the scene, so James Dunham was actually correct that the gunshots had alerted people in the area. And so some accounts say that people all came at once before the police arrived and traipsed through the house. Some sources didn't even mention that. I don't know what to believe, because we all know that these 1800s crime scenes were not cordoned off from the public in any way.
No, they were usually total circuses.
Yeah, but I guess it wasn't too, witnesses had seen James Dunham riding away on horseback, and George Shable was a living witness to what had happened. So they really, whether they were all over the crime scene or not, everybody knew who did it. And so, I mean, we're never going to know why he did this. This was a good one. The Berkeley Gazette suggested that, quote, his academic studies turned his brain and crazed him. So he started taking Latin and Greek courses, and his mind turned
Latin
to mush.
And Greek.
Yep.
Drove him crazy. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
But there, most likely it had something to do with his marriage not working out in some way for him. It seems like he had it made, so I don't really know why he thought he had to do this, but maybe she was planning on leaving him, and that's what set it off. We're never going to know.
Yeah, because it seems this is the best possible situation for him.
Right? You would think, I don't know. And if part of it is maybe he did all this to make sure that his son got this great inheritance or something, but I don't know. It just seems like a lot of trouble for that, and he never sees his son again, so who knows.
I mean, if I was that son, I would never want to see him again.
Yeah, I think I'd be grateful for that. So he did something kind of smart, unfortunately, for this time period. He destroyed all but one photograph of himself.
Oh, wow.
He missed one, but he tried to erase every picture of himself, which makes everybody think that, you know, this was very much premeditated, like he knew what he was doing.
Who else did that?
I think it was List.
Was it? Yes, I think it was.
Yeah, because then eventually they did that bust on America's Most Wanted, and they found him that way because they didn't really have pictures of him.
Busted by the bust.
That's right. That's the one. God, that case is fucked up. That's the Tiffany chandelier one.
Mm-hmm.
Just one other little weird factoid about this, because there's not a lot of evidence that came out after the case happened. James Dunham was a bike guy.
Okay.
Apparently, some people had seen him working on a bike the day before the murders. There is apparently evidence that he was like a long-distance biker. And they found a bike like abandoned near the McGlincy ranch. And they suspected that he had like left it there hoping to use it as a getaway. But like, obviously the terrain must have been pretty bad. So like, he took the horse, so...
Well, that's probably why he didn't have a saddle on, because he's a bike guy.
He's a bike guy. He didn't know exactly what he was
doing.
He
was like, how do I...
Yeah.
He's lucky he got on the right way on the horse.
Yeah, I hope it really hurt him. I hope it was jostling his nutsack the whole time.
I hope his nutsack got absolutely demolished by that horse. Appreciate that kid, because you're not having any more.
Yeah. So, bike guy. But so posses of like townspeople and men went into the hills and the mountains nearby in California. They even went as far as like sending his picture to Mexico. People really felt like they would be able to find him because he had a bit of a head start, but they didn't know how much. They did have a picture of him, even though he thought he had erased all of them. So they're like,
asshole.
We're going to find this guy. They were so wrong. They were so wrong. They never could find anything. Apparently, there were times when they were like right on his trail, or at least they thought so, where they found like scraps of clothing and old campfires and like evidence of somebody being on the run. But some people also like have a story where they heard like one gunshot when they thought they were closing in on him. So they thought maybe he might have taken his own life, but nobody's ever found his body. So we have no idea.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he did that, you'd think they would have found him.
Yeah, but it hasn't stopped speculation. There were like headlines running in 1897 like Dunham is now in Cuba, or Dunham's visit to Hermosillo, or positively identified as Dunham. But it just never actually happened. So the newspapers really wanted it to happen.
Yeah.
Apparently, the farmhand, George Shable, had looked at a picture of a prisoner from a place in Mexico, and he was like, that's him. Even that never came to anything. Like, I don't know if he was wrong or if they could never prove it, but this tells you all you need to know. At one time, in a single week, the San Jose sheriff got 3 telegrams. One from Wyoming, one from Alabama, and one from Texas in the same week saying, hey, Sheriff, we got him. We've got James Dunham in custody.
Oh, no.
So it was just one of those cases where everybody thought they had him because it was a white guy from California.
Yeah, I mean, back then, quality of photography was not great either.
Exactly.
So, like, even if you did have a picture of him, it could look like a lot of people,
and
probably.
he could change his appearance, grow out a beard, whatever.
Tear off his clothes and leave them around.
Yeah.
Scraps of
leave
fabric.
Little booby traps everywhere for people. Even as recently as 1953, people thought that some bones that were found near Mount Hamilton were possibly James Dunham's, but they were not able to be linked to him. A sheriff's office inspector, his name's William Salt, said, quote, "Every time somebody finds an old bone in that area, the word gets around that it might be part of Dunham's skeleton. Usually it turns out to be from an animal."
That's a bummer that they
Yeah.
never found him.
Never found out.
When he was so clearly the culprit,
Yeah.
and it would have been a slam dunk.
Exactly. But I just want to quickly, I'm towards the end of my tale here. Sort of like my last case, the Los Feliz murder mansion, people lived in this house after the murder took place.
Oh, wow.
It was inhabited for at least another 60 years after this, but then in 1956, it was demolished to make way for suburban housing.
Where is this again? In the Bay Area?
Campbell, California. I don't know. Maybe it's not called that anymore, but I think close to San Jose. So the headstones that I mentioned at the beginning of this, all of James Dunham's victims, except for Minnie, the maid, are buried next to each other at this place, Oak Hill Memorial Park. The headstones and inscriptions were paid for by this fraternal society called Oddfellows. But, and this is, again, sort of why I picked this, across the graves, they have a message. The message is, "Vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord."
Fuck.
So Robert Briscoe, the farmhand, has the word vengeance on his coffin. And then the colonel has is mine. Vengeance is mine. The wife, Ada McGlincy, has I will repay. Hattie has saith. And then James, good James, has the Lord. So again, taken together, their coffins say, "Vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord."
Fuck.
And then Minnie is buried in her family's plot somewhere else.
Well, I'm glad that she got to be with her family.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this fraternal society probably paid for this and did all this because this entire family was wiped out. Like, nobody else was going to do it. Because I don't know if this family wanted "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord" on their graves, but it happened.
God, that's metal.
Yeah. My last point, so remember Percy, 22-day-old Percy. He ended up having a pretty good life despite his horrible beginning. He was adopted by family members on Hattie's side of the family. Duh.
Yeah.
James' family was like, no, let's not get anywhere near these people.
Yeah.
So he was adopted, and then he became a colonel in the Air Force, and he served in both World Wars. He died when he was 72 and is buried at Arlington National Cemetery.
Wow, that is a crazy story that I had never heard before.
Yeah, I want to go see these tombstones because what the fuck? Vengeance is mine.
Yeah, wow, that is really powerful stuff.
Yeah, and like seeing all the graves in a row, like with the same date of death, it's haunting.
Yeah, that is unsettling.
Yup. That's my story.
Wow. Well, thanks, Mom.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne.
For this disturbing tale of family murder.
Yeah, exactly. I have an edit. I looked more closely at the picture. So there are 6 graves in a row, but there are only 5 victims. It looks like another family member was buried with them later on and doesn't have anything in the sentence. Vengeance is mine. He got skipped.
Well, if he wasn't part of the murder, he doesn't get the cool say.
He doesn't need the vengeance, it seems like.
No, definitely not.
Anyway, if the numbers weren't adding up to anybody, that's why.
Thank you. Well, while we ponder this haunting tale, I think it's time for an ad break.
Yes!
Welcome to the Getting Down and Wordy podcast ad.
What do we do on this podcast?
Well, it's the first Edda musical podcast.
Can you try that again in real words so that people can understand?
Fine. We talk about the intersection of popular music and language.
Oh, can we also talk about Eurovision?
Okay.
Find us on Apple and Spotify.
We are a Podmoth Network podcast.
And that's why when I am buried, I would like my tombstone to be hung from a invisible wire so that it's floating. And when people come across it, it'll be really unnerving.
What's it gonna say?
It's gonna say, look behind you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't look down.
Don't look down.
I love it.
I don't know, barring some great tragedy, and then I might steal, vengeance is mine, the Lord repays.
we don't want that. Of course.
No. Knocking on some local wood. All right. So it is February, and February is, of course, Black History Month. And I was thinking about what topics we could do for Black History Month because we are big fans of Black history. One of our favorite figures is the first female mortician who was also the first Black female mortician.
Yeah.
And so I thought that we would pay some tribute to Black History Month with a super important topic. When people talk about the era of slavery in the United States, I feel like a lot of focus is put, of course, on the daily situations of enslaved people. But one thing that I feel like I was not taught in school was what happened to the remains and the bodies of deceased enslaved people.
Yeah, I have no idea. So I'm glad you're going to cover this one.
Yeah, and it's on purpose that this is something that's not taught to us. I mean, it's pretty hideous. I'll put a trigger warning on this entire thing because it's painfully upsetting how the dead of enslaved people were treated. And so I just want to give you guys a heads up about that. But we are going to get right into it because I feel like, again, a super important topic.
Yeah, very necessary.
So some sources right off the bat. We have 2 articles from the AfricanAmericanRegistry.org. One from agoodgoodbye.com, which is a death-themed website.
Sure, yeah, got that.
Yeah. Adams.house.gov, which is a government website.
Mm-hmm.
And NBCnews.com.
Okay. I'm getting Minnie in frame, so I can also have easy access to pet her if I get sad.
Nice. Yeah, you're going to need it. So I wanted to start this story off with something kind of positive. So in the NBC News article, they talked about a man whose name was Raphael Morris. And when he was about 10 years old, his dad was driving him through Hillsdale, Missouri, and they didn't live too far away from there. And he stopped in front of this cemetery called Greenwood Cemetery and told him that he has family there. And at the time, Raphael said that it wasn't that impactful to him until about 50 years later, when he heard a report that this particular cemetery was in terrible disarray. And he was like, okay, I'm gonna go. This was in 2016. And he was like, I'm gonna go check it out, see for myself. And once he saw like how bad the land was, he was like, I feel obligated to help. His family was buried there. And so he said, when he got there, it was riddled with like discarded mattresses, TV sets. Like, basically there was a quote in there where he was saying that people were dumping like their whole houses out there.
That's horrible. Like, what?
Yeah. And I mean, this is going to be the case for a lot of the cemeteries that we discuss, is that they fall into like really terrible disrepair. And after Morris tired from his job, he decided that he was going to devote himself to restoring this Black cemetery.
Wow. In his he's like, yeah, I've had a nice career. I'm going to just start a whole other career.
Yeah, he worked for a chemical company.
Oh.
But he was like, fuck it. I'm going to go restore this cemetery.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and he ended up teaming up with a historian named Etta Daniels, and they were able to get a bunch of like other people in the community to come together, and they were able to start clearing all the debris and garbage and gross, just random shit that people had been leaving in this resting place, this final resting place.
Yeah, I don't know how you can justify that. Like, yeah. It's a cemetery. It's not a dumping ground. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Why?
And this is a very important cemetery because, Greenwood Cemetery, this was founded in 1847, and it was the first Black communal burial ground for the St. Louis area after the Civil War. So these are like freed Black people.
Yeah. You want to see the best in people and think that it's innocent and just like, but I don't think this happens at predominantly white cemeteries. I've never heard of them being used as a dumping ground for garbage.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and this cemetery is the resting place of about 50,000 people.
Oh, God.
It's not a small cemetery.
That's so fucked up.
And one of the people who is buried there is Harriet Scott, whose husband is Dred Scott, who sued for his freedom in the Supreme Court case Dred Scott versus Stanford.
Yeah,
so
hugely impactful piece of Black history.
Exactly. As well as Civil War veterans and Lucy Delaney, who wrote the 1890s enslaved narrative, quote, "From darkness cometh light." I had heard of that before. I don't know if you had.
It doesn't ring a bell, but I wasn't taught a lot of this stuff, so it doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah, woefully uneducated on Black history are the schools in America. That was a very Yoda way to say it, but
I know what you mean. Yeah,
you know what
definitely
I mean.
The case.
Yeah. And the sad thing was that like Greenwood Cemetery was maintained by members of like the founding families of this cemetery up until like the 70s. And then it was sold. And then the people who owned it let it fall into like neglect. And then there was a lot of vandalism. And so it just became this forgotten piece of land.
Yeah, but like extremely significant historically. It's so sad.
Yeah, but as we know, it's being restored as we speak. And a group of locals formed a group called the Friends of Greenwood in 1999. Yeah. And their goal, of course, to preserve the cemetery.
You said it was 50,000 graves or something like that?
Yeah.
So no wonder it's taking so long because it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, exactly. And this Friends of Greenwood, they started in the 1990s, but of course, as we know, it actually became too much for these people to handle because they all grew older and weren't able to care for it. So it fell into disrepair after that, and then Morris found it.
Okay. Nice.
And one of the most important things about this cemetery is that part of the effort to restore this cemetery is also to start collecting records for the people who are buried there. And so far, they have found at least 35,000 records for like 35,000 different people who are buried there. And this is extremely important because for many of these people who are in this cemetery, the record of them being buried in this cemetery is the only record of them existing. And I think it's really important to have records of those people existing.
Yeah, definitely. And for people to be able to track their history, genealogy isn't just like cool and interesting. It does teach you something, and it gives you appreciation for where your family came from. And yeah, to not be able to have 50,000 people like be included in all of that, and like all of these ancestors not be able to know that part of their history. I'm glad that steps are being taken so that hopefully that won't be as big of a number.
Yeah, exactly. The NBC article was like, it's as much about education as it is about like the ethics of taking care of like your dead. And, this is for, like you said, it's for descendants of the people buried there. It's for students. It's for advocates of Black history. It's just an extremely important project because, of course, the prevalence of Black cemeteries being neglected in our country can be directly tied to the racism first instilled through slavery and then kept up through Jim Crow, and then that persists today. So, direct line.
Yeah.
So many states in the South have seen groups of people who get together to volunteer to come out to sites like this and clean headstones. And some are even advocating, like in Virginia and Georgia, are battling with developers to keep these Black cemeteries intact because they want to build things on top of them and demolish them, basically. The saddest, instance of this is that, like, developers have already gotten there, or the government has already gotten there and paved over Black cemeteries. There's one in Texas that was paved over to build highways.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think I've heard of this. That's so... Yeah, that's disgusting.
It's
Didn't
really
even
hideous.
try to relocate them. Just, oh, no, I think we should put the highway right here.
Well, the thing is that, like, whether or not they knew that it was there before, they would have had to dig up that land to make the highway. You would have found the people.
Yeah.
Like, bones don't just decompose to nothing. That's why we find them.
Yeah, that's
So it's
really
like,
haunting.
it's so fucked up. And, of course, like I was talking about with this direct line of racism that I was talking about, these... who owns land and who doesn't is directly tied to slavery and to Jim Crow. And these kind of predatory land practices, we were talking a little bit about this, how, certain kinds of people can own land in certain kinds of places. We talked about this with the Los Feliz murder house, with homes only being sold to white people. We talked about this with, Lake Lanier?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where a mostly Black town was completely displaced. So priority of Black land ownership has always been extremely minimal in the United States.
Yeah.
And this extends to cemeteries which had extremely little protection when it came to people coming in to develop or to buy the land, just like with Greenwood, bought and then neglected.
Yeah. And we probably don't even know about all of the cemeteries that, that were just lost to time because of racist actions.
Yeah, there are two very powerful quotes by a woman named Cammie Fletcher, who's an associate professor of history at Albright College, and she's the president of the Collective for Radical Death Studies, which I want to learn more about. That's so cool. She is quoted as saying, quote, "When you look at land ownership in this country, it is absolutely at the intersection of patriarchy, whiteness, racism, and Jim Crow. Really nefarious ways in which those developers end up getting land. Quote, Jim Crow allowed Black cemeteries to go unkept and city dollars flowed to white cemeteries. There's a lot more to be said about how whites were just allowed to dislocate Black folks and trample all over Black cemeteries."
Yeah, exactly. It just makes me sick. There's no respect in life or in death. It's sickening.
It really is. But I think on this podcast, we've made a habit of looking into the face of things that are sickening and frightening and sad.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I think, as white ladies who live in America, we have to, when we see these terrible, uncomfortable truths, we gotta look right at them.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for telling the story.
Yeah, of course. I continue. So before emancipation, enslaved African Americans were buried usually on plantation grounds or plots of land that were owned by white people, and usually large rocks would serve as headstones. So during this 363 years of slavery in America, it was actually against the law for slaves to give their loved ones funerals.
Oh my God, what?
Isn't that horrible?
I'm shocked by that.
Yeah. Well, it was something where,
yeah.
White people did not want Black people gathering in large groups for any reason.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because they did not want revolt, they did not want runaway, they did not want communication, they did not want community.
Yeah.
they thought of these people as their property, and they were like, property doesn't get funerals.
Yeah.
Which
Really?
is so fucked.
Yeah. Wow.
But contrarily, when a member of the white owner's family died, they had to wash and prepare the dead. They also had the task of preparing a large meal and working the entire funeral service.
Oh, the slaves did that.
The slaves did that, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. But, of course, deceased enslaved people were often buried without a funeral and on non-crop producing land in unmarked graves. So they were like, you can bury your people here because it's not useful land to us.
Right.
So you can have the scrap land.
Yeah, it's not a holy land. It's just convenient for us.
Yeah, and if you are to look at like the hundreds of maps of all these different plantations and white-owned properties, you will very rarely see on the map these burial grounds, but they're there.
Yeah, they're unmarked.
But they're there, yeah. There's a large one at Mount Vernon for George Washington slaves.
Great. Fuck him. Fuck that guy.
Right. Enslaved children who were too young to work in the fields were the ones who were tasked with digging the graves for the deceased other enslaved people, usually their family members.
Oh my god.
And burials would take place late at night, usually outside of the knowledge of their white, owners and masters.
Yeah.
There is a quote that is from Sam Polite, who was a freed slave, and he kind of explains what the procedure was for when a fellow enslaved person died. I'm gonna censor this just a little bit. When an N-word dead, you can't knock off for work to bury them. You must wait until nighttime to put them in the grave. You must bury them by the light of a torch.
Yeah, because the masters would get mad at them for basically communing together to mourn their person.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Because you couldn't get work off if your, mother, brother, friend died.
Yeah. It was an inconvenience for the slave owners at that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
God. So fucked up.
Yeah. Another freed slave, Elijah Green, has a quote that says, quote, "Slaves was always buried in night as no one could stop it to do it in the day. Old boards were used to make coffins that was blackened with shoe polish." So they're using everything that they, had access to create like a proper burial for their loved ones.
Wow.
So later in the era of slavery, funeral customs were one thing that were kind of left unintruded on. Like we were saying, white owners and masters did not have any interest in deceased enslaved people. So they kind of would, with the mixing of Christianity that was kind of forced onto enslaved people, there kind of began to be a mixing of African traditions and Christian traditions. So they began to have a changing attitude towards enslaved people, began to have a changing attitude towards death, that it would be like a release from the humiliation and agony of living as an enslaved person.
Yeah.
So the funeral was often seen as a homecoming.
Yeah.
Being released from pain.
Oh, that's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, this is difficult.
Yeah.
Like I said, they incorporated many aspects of West African funeral traditions. The body was typically bathed and wrapped in cloth and then laid out on a cooling board. And then the family would gather for like a wake at night, and they would have prayers, and then they would carry the body to the grave around dawn. They would also sometimes place personal items on the grave, and it was said that these personal items, this reminded me a little bit of ancient Egypt, that the people would need the personal items in the next life.
Oh, okay.
Also, there were some black graves that were found with seashells and petals, and this is possibly connected to the Congo region, where their world of the dead is known to be underwater.
Okay.
And I just thought that was a really interesting tidbit.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I've not heard of that because Usually the afterworld is in the sky. I mean, in most of the traditions that I've heard of.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. I was reading about this death tradition, and it's so... It almost tells a bit of the future, because in this culture, white is the color of death. Like when you're dead, you go all white, and,
Yeah.
you know, white is the color of death.
Yeah, for sure.
Another interesting thing that was found in black cemeteries were little pipes that were driven into the ground to offer as like little ways of communication between the dead and the living.
Oh,
So they could talk through the pipe.
Huh, that's really sweet. I've not heard of that either.
Right? Me neither. So in this way, being able to use some of their own traditions out of the sites of their white masters, burial provided an opportunity to provide dignity to death to the dead that was, you know, wholly denied to them in life.
Yeah.
So this is, again, another reason why it's so important to honor these cemeteries, is because of the honor that needs to be put to these people who lived the hardest of lives. After emancipation, there were several African American cemeteries that were created by black churches or groups of black citizens. And these cemeteries hold on to the stories of freed slaves. But unfortunately, there was no legal protection for these properties. So again, there are many groups of volunteers and advocates who are still fighting for the preservation of traditionally black cemeteries. One very prevalent group that I wanted to end talking about is the Black Cemetery Network. This is a group that grew out of a 2020 University of South Florida initiative called the African American Burial Grounds and Remembering Project.
Oh,
and
wow.
You can go online and donate to this, by the way, anybody listening. And this project basically brings together historians, genealogists, community members, and advocates that try to create records and work on preservation of cemeteries in the Florida area. And they have at least 34 black cemeteries in the network at this time.
Wow, that's impressive. That's good. That's really good work that they're doing.
Oh, it's amazing. And I'm definitely going to donate to this.
What's it called again?
It is called the Black Cemetery Network.
Okay.
And I'll make sure to have a link for the show notes for that, and maybe we can post that on our story.
Yeah.
So I will end with an extremely important piece of legislation that was actually passed in February of last year, 2022, and this is the African American Burial Grounds Preservation Act. So the African American Burial Grounds Preservation Act establishes a program at the National Park Service to provide grant opportunities and technical assistance to local partners to research, identify, survey, and preserve these historical sites.
Hell yeah. And please keep doing it.
Yeah, we definitely need to preserve these sites as well as we can. I'm going to end this with a quote from Representative McGlincy, who is a sponsor of this act. And they say, quote, "Since the inception of our country, the graves of African Americans have suffered unjust abuse and neglect. These burial sites hold the stories of millions of African Americans and the integral role they played in our nation's trajectory. I am proud to stand alongside Congresswoman Adams and Senator Brown to introduce the African American Burial Grounds Preservation Act to preserve predominantly black cemeteries and other resting places. The protection of these burial grounds is long overdue and critical to ensuring a more complete, comprehensive understanding of American history."
Well said. Mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop. I'm holding my mic right now, and I do want to drop it, but I don't want to drop it because it was expensive.
Yes,
But
yes.
I just think it's so much has been done to erase the black experience, and erasing the cemeteries and the history of black ancestors is continually happens. And I think this act is a small step in the right direction to preserving these sites. But, I think, anyone who can, please donate to the Black Cemetery Network and keep your keep your eye out for projects that benefit Black ancestry.
Yeah, hell yeah. Great job. Thank you for telling that story. I think a lot of people will learn things they didn't know about. I certainly feel that way. And
I did too.
Yeah, I'm going to get on blackcemeterynetwork.com, I assume.
Yeah.
That's what it is, or .org, and donate, because that is a super important cause, especially as we wrap up Black History Month.
Yeah, I think preserving cemeteries of all kinds is very close to our hearts.
Of course. Well, everybody, enjoy your weekend. Do something nice for yourself if you can.
Yeah.
And take care of your bones. Go for a walk. Move your bones.
Stretch it out.
Stretch it out. Hug your cat.
Pet your dog.
Pet your dog. Don't slip and fall on the ice. Stay inside.
Oh my god, yes. Be so careful driving.
Yes. And
we love you.
We love you, yeah.
You're
Take
cute.
it easy.
Take it easy. Take it easy now. And tell somebody about the Black Cemetery Network.
Yes. Bone. Boy.
Oh my god.
Jazzy, baby.
Jazzy, baby. Wow. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Anything Bones. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Anything Bones Podcast, or email us at anythingbonespodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Nick Kruger for our spooky music and Stephen Vetteroff
At Chubby Scrubby on Twitter,
for our jazzy vocals, and thank you to Camilla Franklin
at Camilla Strader on Instagram.
for our beautiful bony artwork. Please rate, review, and subscribe.
Yeah, I hope it really hurt him. I hope it was jostling
Yeah.
his nutsack the whole time.
I hope his nutsack got absolutely demolished by that horse.